Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Forgotten History. I am Sunil Musson.
And I'm Gunnar Englert. Today we are discussing Vietnamese immigration after the Vietnam War in San Diego and throughout California. But first, we need to explain the cause of immigration. In October of 1955, Vietnam was split at the 17th parallel into the Democratic Republic of Vietnam in the north and the Republic of Vietnam in the south.
Backed by the Soviet Union and China, Hanoi in the north remained communist, whereas Saigon in the south remained loyal to the United States and the Western Bloc.
Beginning in 1955, war broke out between the North and the South. The conflict continued to escalate. Then in 1965, the President of the United States, at that time, Lyndon B. Johnson, deployed the first ground troops to Vietnam, which would lead to more elements of the United States military heading to the country.
According to Digital History, by 1968, the United States had 536,000 troops in the country. It was actually more than that. In January of that year, the agreed peace on the holiday of the Tet was broken, starting the Tet Offensive.
The Tet Offensive was a very deadly offensive, as we've known. But later in the war, after 8 years of U.S. direct involvement in the war, in 1973, the Paris Peace Accords were put into place, officially ending the United States combat involvement in the Vietnam War, with the majority of the United States forces withdrawing and the return of most U.S. prisoners from POW camps.
The Republic of Vietnam, or the South, which had been fighting alongside its allies the whole time, was now alone in the war. With the North, the South was able to continue the war on its own until 1975.
North Vietnam launched a final offensive in April of that year, invading the capital of Saigon.
This was called the Fall of Saigon, which officially ended the war on April 30th, 1975, along with the end of the war and the fall of the Republic of Vietnam.
The war left an estimated 1 to 3 million civilians and soldiers dead, including 58,000 Americans, and left the country of Vietnam in ashes and in communist rule.
So let's talk about this. So pretty much, it was very surprising to many when the North Vietnamese won, as their technology was vastly inferior to the United States.
Yes, and its allies, such as Australia and obviously the Army Republic of Vietnam and South Korea.
Many people today, they have grandparents or grandfathers and whatnot who fought in Vietnam. It was an interesting time, What are your thoughts on that?
I think Vietnam, it definitely is a very interesting war, but it's very sad at the same time because the amount of people who died and the lasting impact it left on the United States and Vietnam.
As we knew, I'd say most of the war is very unpopular in the United States amongst most civilians. I mean, I'm sure most people know about the various protests and whatnot, the anti-wars,
Yeah, there's many of those which were very... They had their reasons, if depending on your views, but the war was very important to American history, and it certainly changed the landscape of
controversial
modern conflicts.
Okay. After enduring the fall of Saigon, many soldiers and civilians did not want to stay in the country of South Vietnam, as they feared political persecution from the new government and the loss of personal freedoms under the new regime.
This led to Operation Frequent Wind and Operation New Life, which evacuated refugees, orphans, and government workers from South Vietnam. They were able to evacuate a total of 132,000 Southern Vietnamese.
The tactics used to evacuate people included airlifts and maritime vessels. They were then taken to processing centers in Guam and the Philippines before being transported elsewhere.
From there, after being processed in these locations, they were resettled over the United States. More importantly, we are focusing on resettlement in California, which, more importantly, in focusing on San Diego.
This brings us to Camp Pendleton, where 50,000 Vietnamese refugees stayed and lived in a tent city for months after the war.
I would like to add, yes, it was the largest refugee camp and probably the most influential one in the country, I would say. According to the San Diego Union Tribune, almost 900 American soldiers and civilians worked to erect 985 tents and cone sets, huts, along with sewage systems and other necessities.
The program, called Operation New Life, was a collective collaboration from the United States government, American Red Cross, the Catholic Church, and various other humanitarian organizations, and many more volunteers.
For the first time in months, the refugees lived in peace with shelter, clothing, food, education, and a new life in the United States.
With the help of sponsor families, children began to enroll in schools, quickly learning English, and adults were employed in new jobs as their lives slowly recovered from the tragedy of war.
But life wasn't easy in the tent city. After treacherous voyages across the Pacific, refugees lived in a crowded tent with dozens of other people and waited in long lines for food. Refugees were forced to leave behind property, family, and their lives in the old Vietnam.
Life in the camps, it wasn't too bad compared to obviously dying, but many of these people, they weren't just refugees. They lived in grand houses. They were people that have never experienced such life.
I think it's hard to say they all lived in grand houses, certainly because of Vietnam's economical position, especially during the 1960s and 70s, right? But certainly, yeah, why would you? They didn't know what was going to happen to them if they stayed behind. It was very tragic, you know?
Yeah. I mean, many of them to this day say how they were very grateful to the
United States.
and all the volunteers that helped them do this, because without that, who knows what could have happened to them. Well, nevertheless, the refugees slowly integrated into their new American life, and a large Vietnamese community began to grow in Southern California. According to U.S. Census data, California is now home to close to 800,000 Vietnamese Americans, having the largest concentration in the country.
Today, Vietnamese ethnic enclaves have grown in California, where many migrants built a shared community and a new home away from home. Locally, there are Little Saigons in Orange County and in the City Heights region of San Diego.
So in Orange County, there's obviously Westminster, and then there's other regions elsewhere. But anyways, these cultural hotspots became a fusion of American and Vietnamese culture. In these areas, you can find lots of Vietnamese foods and experience events such as the San Diego Tet Festival, which is one of Vietnam's largest holidays.
One success story of culture fusion is the famous sriracha hot sauce and Hoi Fong foods. According to Sriracha To Go, founder David Tran was a major in the South Vietnamese Army who left communist Vietnam on a freighter called the Hoi Fong with over 3,000 other refugees.
David Tran's hot sauce recipe called for peppers that were less available in the States, so he turned to more locally available red chili peppers. First selling the sauce out of recycled baby food jars, Tran's business steadily grew. In 1980, Hoi Fong Foods was founded in Los Angeles from humble beginnings.
While American Vietnamese community may thrive, today it is tragic. Its tragic origins cannot be forgotten. The scars of the Vietnam War still affect millions of Vietnamese and Americans who lost their family members in the fighting and left behind established lives.
Many families remain divided and fragmented between the two nations, and millions of civilians and veterans remember the destruction brought by the Vietnam War. But in the ashes of battle, hope for a better life created a wonderful community.
We hope you have enjoyed learning about the Vietnamese communities in Southern California with the refugees that came over. This has been Gunnar Englert
And Sunil with Forgotten History.